I need my pen. Hey everybody, can I get your attention? Okay, we're doing the calm down, stop talking. Thanks, yeah, I haven't got my pen to hit something. I would just like to acknowledge the partnership between Fujitsu New Zealand and Business New Zealand that has brought us today's event. Fujitsu New Zealand is one of the largest ICT companies in this part of the world, leading service provider of business information technology and communication solutions. Fujitsu New Zealand has been part of our pre-budget partner for some time now through 3 election cycles, which is an outstanding commitment, so we do appreciate that. Thank you, Fujitsu. I'd also like to thank Fujitsu New Zealand Country Manager Rob Purdy for taking the time to be with us today. I would like to invite Rob to say a few words and to introduce the Prime Minister. Rob.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Konnichiwa, talofa, and unmurabak to those who have just completed Ramadan. Distinguished guests, the Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern, Honourable Megan Woods, Honourable Chris Farfoy, and Honourable Chris Hipkins. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Rob Purdy, and I'm the Country Manager of Fujitsu. And it gives me great pleasure today to introduce Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern on the much anticipated 2022 budget. It's been just over 2 years since digital took the driving force in the way that we work. Minister David Clark said in his draft Digital Technologies Industry Transformation Plan that despite the ongoing headwinds, the digital technology sector is thriving. And I think it's an outstanding achievement that can be put down to the commitment of Kiwis to be agile, to adapt and overcome. And if anything the pandemic has taught us, connecting people with tools and technology is now vital. Not only for our businesses, but our staff, our customers, our citizens and our economy. But now we're in the thick of it, the question remains, how do we keep at pace and how do we support our country to thrive? Aotearoa's IT industry has the opportunity and the responsibility to enable easy access and the use of technology to communities and businesses. Digital is the pathway to tomorrow's jobs, and digital is the answer to connecting Aotearoa to a brighter future. We're now almost midway through 2022 and many headwinds still remain. I believe global crisis requires global solutions. Through the power of innovation, New Zealand has the potential to become a world-leading digital nation built on trust. And at Fujitsu, our purpose is to make the world more sustainable by building trust in society through innovation. At the beginning of the pandemic, like most of yours, we underwent a big shift, enabling 120,000 people to work from home globally. Not a small undertaking. And between February and November 2020, we saw nearly an increase of 5,000% of online video calls and Teams meetings. Really crazy growth. And over the last 2 years, Fujitsu has improved our capability to better serve Aotearoa's communities and businesses and has gone under significant transformation. We have better positioned ourselves by becoming an industry-aligned organisation. Fujitsu has appointed heads of industry and heads of digital transformation who are responsible for delivering the best global IP that Fujitsu has locally. And we're also continuing to expand in the ANZ region, and in April 2021 we acquired data analytics and AI company Versa. Versa underpins the real-time business decisions and the data that we need to run our businesses. It was the first of 2 acquisitions in ANZ in the last year, and it exemplifies our global strategy to invest locally to better serve our customers. In saying this, innovation and technology is only good at the people and the culture behind it. We as business leaders need the relevant capabilities and skills to engage our staff and help build a sustainable future. Sustainability is a critical focus area as we see it as our future success. At the beginning of last year, the ANZ business created an Office of Purpose led by Nicole Forrester, who is a member on the executive leadership team with myself. The Office of Purpose is not only our lifeblood for sustainability initiatives, but it also drives our social impact, diversity and inclusion transformation. Guided by our principles of waiwata, tiakiatanga and ahuroa, we have developed a business-wide purpose strategy which includes our Māori and Pacific Peoples Inclusion Plan. We've also introduced volunteering with purpose and our sustainability goals. The Office of Purpose has also led initiatives such as working with Mind the Gap, engagement with the Sustainable Business Council, and of course working with Business New Zealand. Other key areas Fujitsu New Zealand has been focused on are our decade-long pro bono partnership with the Young Enterprise Scheme, the support we provide to CreateOps and YTech that help connect female, Māori and Pacific high school students with the technology sector, Tuputoa, who we're working with to bring Māori and Pacific interns into the IT sector later this year. And I'm proud to announce today we've launched a partnership with the Graham Dingle Foundation, a leading child and youth development charity empowering young people to succeed. For as our tamariki that is the future of this country. Diversity, equality and inclusion are integral for us all to collectively achieve our purpose. By creating a supportive and inclusive culture where people with different talents and capabilities can be themselves, we as business leaders can create meaningful solutions that transform this country. Amidst of all of this change, we are very attuned to the fact that we will not return to the way we worked. Digital shifts is one of our 7 key global priorities, and we're not only making this transformational shift ourselves, but we are supporting customers and leading them through this rapidly changing landscape. The future of work is upon us. Kiwi resilience has been at the core towards reconnecting with the world as a clear shift from striving to thriving through the pandemic. We are committed to enabling, empowering and innovation that reconnects New Zealand on its ongoing journey towards a digital future. As author Vivian Green explained, life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning how to dance in the rain. Thank you very much. My name is Rob Purdy. Thank you for listening to me. It's my pleasure to welcome Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern.
Well, kia ora koutou katoa, and thank you to Business New Zealand and Fujitsu for hosting us here today. And I'm grateful to be joined by Minister Chris Farfoy and also Minister Chris Hipkins, Ministers for Education and Immigration, but also what I would like to call my backup ministers today should my internet connection fail me. Can I also thank you for being so agile in the arrangements for our lunch event? I had, of course, hoped to be with you in person, but instead I'm having the very 2022 experience of isolating with my family. I apologise in advance for any unexpected visitors. I've decided that Zoom and media calls have an almost uncontrollable magnetism for small children. I wanted to kick off today with a couple of reflections from further afield than these 4 walls. Last month, I was privileged to lead a delegation into Singapore and Japan. While there were many excellent outcomes for New Zealand from both visits, it also served as a reminder to me of the shared experience we are all having as nations right now. There was one visit in particular that served as a visual reminder. Singapore has been a critical partner through COVID as we address supply chain issues. In fact, we agreed to bring together an ongoing task force of sorts on this issue going forward. As part of this agreement, I visited the port in Singapore, a place where 1/5 of our exports pass through. As you can imagine, it was a logistical sight to behold. While the CEO talked us through the port's 30-year plan, I asked him what COVID impacts he was continuing to see in the here and now. He paused briefly before saying, "You won't find a major port that isn't impacted even now." He then pointed out to the scene in front of him and remarked that he never liked to see shipping containers at his port stacked more than 5 high, because that tells him there is congestion in the network. As I looked out, I saw a sea of stacked shipping containers. For me, that highlighted 2 things. There is still a pandemic in the world, and it continues to have an impact in many ways. And at the same time, the war in Ukraine is compounding the global shocks we are seeing reverberate through our economies. I've been on bilateral calls just this week with European leaders to ensure our free trade agreement remains high on their agenda, but also to get their take on the current status of Putin's war. These calls in recent weeks have included the Prime Ministers of the Netherlands, Spain and Sweden. My conversation with Spain's leader, Pedro Sanchez, in particular lingers. He'd been in Kiev only weeks prior and saw in real time what the war means for Ukrainian citizens, but also what it means for the region. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has resulted in the destabilization of Europe in a way that has reverberated around the world. It is having an impact on the sense of security we feel as a global community, as well as contributing to an already difficult inflationary cycle that on the individual level brings costs of living to the fore. There are heavy clouds over the world at the moment, and I know that New Zealanders feel the weight of it all right now too. But the reason I outline this is because while there is no question that currently it is tough and there are challenges to confront, I've been reflecting on the perspective provided by visiting and talking with counterparts overseas. There is cause for New Zealand in particular to feel optimistic, because we are well positioned to accelerate our economic recovery. We've come through the COVID shock better than almost anywhere in the developed world. In fact, our economy is one of the strongest in the world. We have record low unemployment of 3.2%, and economic activity is up on what it was pre-COVID. Our debt levels are half of what Australia's are. Annual GDP growth is 5.6% over the past year, compared to 1.2% in 2009 after the global financial crisis. Now, none of these results were an accident or even a coincidence. They're a result of deliberate decisions we have made as a government and the efforts of the whole team of 5 million. It's due to the investments we have made in training and supporting New Zealanders into work, while protecting people and livelihoods from the worst effects of the pandemic. The wage subsidy, which supported nearly half of all Kiwi workers, the resurgent support, the business loan scheme. It's due to the apprenticeship boost, which has supported 43,000 apprentices despite tough times, and job support schemes like the flexi wage that have financially supported employers to take on workers who might otherwise be on government support. And it's in part too, because we've taken the hard edges of the immediate cost of living crisis, lifting the incomes of 60% of New Zealand families on April 1 and cutting fuel excise for a period. And now, it's because we are casting our eyes to the future as we continue our reconnecting plan, welcoming back our Australian neighbours and tourists from around 60 visa waiver countries earlier than expected, because we controlled COVID and it was safe to do so, as well as bringing in over 29,000 workers to do the jobs that couldn't wait while our borders were closed. It is a plan that has worked, but there is a lot more to do. Next Thursday, the Minister of Finance will release Budget 2022. It's a front row event that I'm hoping I will get to check in my ticket on. A budget that takes the opportunity to make investments that secure our future whilst also responding to the most pressing issues in front of us, because we must do both. In my conversations over the past few months with both international partners and businesses here at home, the biggest economic constraint we faced, but also the biggest economic solution, is workforce, getting the skills right for the right job. This was the case after the global financial crisis too, but back then a different tack was taken. Business support was withdrawn, and those still learning their trades were, out of necessity, often let go. An infrastructure deficit ensued. Instead of continuing to invest in and train New Zealanders who build our homes, upgrade our infrastructure, work in our hospitals, and help us innovate to meet long-term challenges like climate change, our economy reverted to seeking workers from offshore. This often resulted in labour that drove down wages and productivity across the country, whilst also depriving migrant workers of the experience they deserved here in New Zealand. It was a situation that was letting everyone down, and the numbers tell that story. Between 2012 and 2019, the number of migrant workers employed in New Zealand increased by approximately 144%. At the same time, the New Zealand workforce increased by about 15%. New Zealand has been shown to have the heaviest reliance on temporary migrant labour in the OECD. Now, I want to be clear, migrants shape our society for the better in so many ways. They make enormous sacrifices and massive contributions to New Zealand. It's one of the reasons why, as a government, we recently provided 192,000 migrants a streamlined pathway to residence through the 2021 resident visa. But we have a duty of care to everyone, that as we reopen our borders, we do so with a plan in place that means we learn the lessons of the past. The aftermath of the GFC cannot be repeated. It was never tolerable for us that unemployment at the height of COVID would reach, for example, 10% as projected by Treasury, and 3.2% today is testament to our actions to ensure that didn't happen. For Māori, after the GFC, unemployment hit 14%. Today, it's 6.3%. And this has again been down to those deliberate decisions, including investment in our people. One of the biggest successes of the government in the past 2 years is the 190,000 people that our investments in trades training, including apprentices, have helped to deliver. And I do want to particularly acknowledge Minister Hipkins and the role he's played in that. On Monday, we announced a further extension to the apprenticeship boost to continue fueling that success, ensuring businesses are supported to grow as much talent in New Zealand as possible. To meet our long-term challenges, such as building the homes and the infrastructure our country needs to grow, and ensuring every New Zealander can get a tradie when they need one. But still, COVID has left us with a skills shortage in New Zealand, and businesses need to be able to access the labour they need and look after the people they hire year-round in a sustainable, easy, faster way than the current immigration policies allow. That is why today I can announce a package to speed up our economic recovery while setting us up to address long-term challenges. First, today I can announce that New Zealand fully reopens to the world by July 31, completing our reconnecting work 2 months ahead of schedule. In a few days' time, on the 16th of May, visitor visas from the Pacific Islands will open online. Then from the 4th of July, all work visa categories, including the new accredited employer work visa, will open for applications. A few weeks later, on the 31st of July, student and visitor visas from the rest of the world will reopen and international education returns. Cruise ships will return too, with the maritime border reopening on the 31st of July. Now that we have dates, I understand that the next question, naturally, is whether all of our border settings, including pre-departure testing, will remain in place. As we begin the consultation on our variant plan, it's clear that monitoring at the border will continue to be important, but we will be able to change up the role that pre-departure testing has played. Now, while we're still working through this transition, it's fair to say we are confident pre-departure testing will be removed by the time we come to the final phase of our reopening in July. Overall, these announcements mean we have brought forward our complete reopening by 2 months, and we're giving enough time for our cruise ship industry to prepare for the next big season starting in October. I know this will be welcome news, and it's a phase we are ready for. Second, today I can announce a rebalance of our immigration settings that will simplify and speed up access to skilled workers in hard-to-fill roles while creating new pathways to residence. Central to this rebalance is the new accredited employer work visa. Now, the streamlined accredited employer work visa process combines 6 visas into one and uses a simple 3-step process: an employer check, a job check, and a worker check. For an employer, this will cut the processing time from up to 80 days pre-COVID to less than 30. The process for becoming accredited opens on the 23rd of May, in 12 days' time. The accredited employer work visa comes with a medium wage requirement, which will be $27.76 by July. Not only does this bring the added benefit of lifting wages, conditions, and productivity for everyone working in these jobs, including New Zealanders, it will also help us better protect those who come here to help us. And we're ready to kick off in just 8 weeks, with processing of these visas beginning from the 4th of July. Now, the second significant change is the introduction of what will be known as a green list for highly skilled and in-demand workers. For those professions on this list, they will have a faster and simpler pathway to residence. The green list will include globally in-demand roles such as health professionals, GPs, nurses, midwives, tradespeople and engineers, including surveyors, project builders, geotechnical and environmental engineers, plumbers, electricians, teachers who are ECE registered or secondary with specialisation, dairy farm managers, and tech sector specialists, just to name a few. From the outset, this list will cover 56 roles on a straight to residence pathway and 29 roles on a 2-year work to residence pathway. Now, simply put, this means a doctor or a structural engineer will be able to apply for residence as soon as they decide they want to come to New Zealand and have a job offer. And a nurse or an electrician will be eligible to apply for residence after 2 years working here on an accredited employer work visa. Workers earning twice the median wage for an accredited employer will also be able to apply for residence after 2 years. The jobs on the green list will be reviewed after 12 months initially, then every 3 years after that. Now, the introduction of the green list is significant and its purpose is simple. There are some areas where we know we have skills gaps, and we want to make recruitment as easy as possible, giving certainty around the ability for people to stay if they bring these skills in has been a missing piece in our immigration system. Now, alongside these changes, we will have transition arrangements in place. For those sectors where it will take time to get wages to meet the median wage, we're introducing sector-specific agreements to allow sectors to continue accessing some migrant workers who are paid below the median wage. These agreements give time for those sectors to improve working conditions and put significant efforts into retaining, training and upskilling New Zealanders. In acknowledgement of the tough time in particular for tourism and hospitality, and to support their rebuild, we're providing a transitional measure for many of the roles in those sectors by exempting them from the median wage and instead including a lower wage requirement for the time being, while they recover from the effects of the pandemic. This recognises that these sectors rely heavily on working holiday visas and students, whose numbers will take time to regrow. In addition, we'll extend visas for most temporary work visa holders in New Zealand to ensure skilled workers already here can remain as we accelerate our recovery. This will cover about 20,000 workers and their families, many who will also receive open work rights, so they'll be able to work for any employer. Finally, there will also continue to be the additional schemes that allow people to come to New Zealand to work, including through working holiday schemes, student visas, and the RSE scheme. These workers are crucial to our workforce and will help bolster the industries that will be in demand during our COVID recovery. Now, there's a lot of information in these announcements, and I want to give Minister Faafoi a chance to speak in a bit more detail before we open up for questions. But before I do, a couple of closing thoughts. Today represents a significant milestone in our recovery plan. This package is designed to address the urgent skill shortages created by COVID, while also putting our immigration settings on a better and more sustainable footing. Employers will have greater access to skilled workers to address workforce needs, and with our new opening dates, families and friends can reunite and international students can return to New Zealand, and the return of international visitors will provide a much needed boost to our tourism and events sector. The July reopening dates will also provide confidence to airlines planning a return to New Zealand routes for the peak season and in the wider tourism sector recovery. But overall, we had an opportunity here to get smart about immigration, and we've taken it to speed up our recovery. I'm now, though, delighted to hand over to Minister Faafoi to lay out further details.